The wind outside had gone silent, leaving only the oppressive weight of darkness pressing against the ancient windows of Hinton Ampner. Mary Ricketts sat up in her bed, her breath caught in her throat as the air around her turned icy. The stillness was unnatural, thick with the tension of something unseen lurking just beyond the veil of night. And then she heard it, the slow, deliberate creak of footsteps moving through the empty hall outside her room. They were closer now than before, heavier, more menacing, like a predator stalking its prey. Her heart raced, each beat echoing louder in the crushing silence as the footsteps paused just outside her door. Every muscle in her body tensed, her eyes darting to the door as it swung open with a bone-chilling groan, revealing the long shadow cast upon the floor. But the door was empty. No human figure stood there. For a moment, she thought her mind was playing cruel tricks on her again. But the temperature in the room plummeted, and a voice, a cold, low whisper, filled the air, calling her name from the darkness. It wasn't a voice she recognized. It was something far older, far more malevolent. The walls themselves seemed to breathe with the cold presence, exhaling an ancient, restless energy. And then she saw it. The shadowy figure, its face nothing but a twisted void, standing at the foot of her bed, silent, watching. Her scream died in her throat as it leaned closer, its cold, empty eyes boring into hers. And then, with a voice that sounded like the crack of 1,000 whispers, it finally spoke. "Get out!" Mary's body went numb as the figure dissipated into the air, leaving only the lingering scent of damp earth and rot. Trembling, she bolted from the bed, knowing all too well that this was not a dream, not her imagination, but a warning. And the real terror was just beginning. Whatever haunted the halls of Hinton Ampner was awake now, fully aware of her, and it wasn't going to let her leave without a fight. In the dead of night, with nothing but shadows as her company, Mary realized that the curse of Hinton Ampner had claimed its first victim, her sanity. This is The Haunting of Hinton Ampner, a forgotten tale of torment. Hinton Ampner is a quiet, picturesque country estate in Hampshire, England, known today for its beautifully restored gardens and peaceful surroundings. But beneath this serene facade lies a history steeped in one of the most terrifying and forgotten hauntings in British history. The story begins in the late 18th century, when a series of eerie and unexplainable events shattered the peaceful life of its residents. In 1765, Mary Ricketts and her young family moved into the estate, unaware of the dark legacy that would soon engulf their lives. Shortly after settling in, they began experiencing strange occurrences that grew more disturbing with time. At first, it was just the occasional sound, a distant whisper, a strange creak in the floorboards, or an unsettling sensation of being watched. But these soon escalated into a living nightmare. It was during the cold winter months that the first serious incident occurred. Late one night, while her children were asleep, Mary heard the unmistakable sound of footsteps pacing back and forth outside her bedroom door. When she went to investigate, no one was there. Dismissing it as her imagination, she returned to bed, only for the footsteps to start again. This time they were louder, heavier, and seemed to be moving closer. She could feel a cold chill running down her spine, but again, no one was there. Over the following days, more unsettling incidents began to plague the house. Doors would slam shut with no apparent cause, and Mary began to hear muffled voices in the dead of night, low, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Yet despite their growing fear, the family stayed, believing that these were the harmless noises of an old house settling. But then things took a darker turn. One night, as Mary was reading by candlelight in her bedroom, she saw something that chilled her to the core. Out of the corner of her eye, a shadowy figure seemed to move across the room. Startled, she looked up, but nothing was there. Just as she was about to return to her book, the figure reappeared, this time standing at the foot of her bed. A dark, faceless shape. It loomed in silence, exuding a malevolent presence that seemed to suck the warmth from the air. Mary screamed, and the figure vanished into the night. Her husband, who rushed to her side, found her trembling and barely able to speak. From that moment on, the house felt different. The once warm and inviting rooms seemed colder, and a constant feeling of dread hung in the air. The Ricketts family realized that they were not alone, and whatever had taken residence in their home was not benevolent. As the haunting grew worse, the manifestations became more violent. Furniture would be thrown across rooms, pictures ripped from walls, and the children's toys were found scattered and broken, despite no one having entered their rooms. The presence, once only a shadow, now made its presence known in full force. One terrifying night, as Mary tucked her children into bed, the eldest, a boy of 7, began screaming in terror. He claimed to have seen a figure standing at the window, looking in with hollow, black eyes. When Mary rushed to check, she found nothing but the chill of the night air seeping through the glass. But the boy insisted, describing the figure in such chilling detail that Mary was left unnerved. What the boy described was not human. He spoke of a gaunt, twisted face with sunken eyes and a grin that stretched unnaturally wide. The figure had no hands, but instead sharp, bony protrusions that scratched at the window, trying to get in. From that night onward, the children refused to sleep alone, terrified of the specter that visited them each night. As the months wore on, the constant terror began to take its toll on the family. Mary's husband became increasingly withdrawn, spending long hours away from the estate, unable to bear the oppressive atmosphere. The children became pale and sickly, plagued by nightmares and sleepless nights. But it was Mary who suffered the most. Driven to the edge of sanity, she sought the help of local priests and spiritualists, all of whom confirmed that the house was plagued by a malevolent spirit. They attempted exorcisms, but nothing worked. The manifestations only grew stronger, as though the spirit was feeding on their fear. One night, as Mary lay in bed, she heard a voice. A low, guttural whisper. It called her name, over and over again. Paralyzed with fear, she was unable to move as the voice grew louder, closer. Suddenly, her bed shook violently, and the air in the room turned ice cold. The shadowy figure appeared once again, this time standing directly beside her. It leaned in close, and for the first time, she heard it speak clearly. "Get out." The figure vanished, leaving her shaking and breathless. The message was clear. Whatever haunted Hinton Ampner wanted them gone. Unable to endure the terror any longer, the Ricketts family fled the house in 1771, leaving behind their possessions and any hope of returning. The estate was left to decay, and for many years, no one dared set foot inside. Eventually, Hinton Ampner was rebuilt and restored in the late 19th century, and the stories of the haunting were largely forgotten. But those who knew of the Ricketts family's torment spoke in hushed tones of the malevolent spirit that once terrorized the house. To this day, some visitors claim to feel an eerie presence in the halls of Hinton Ampner, a cold chill in the air, and the faint sound of footsteps echoing in the night. Though much of its haunted past has been lost to time, the chilling events that once took place within its walls remain a dark and forgotten chapter in the estate's history.